my warm-up for you today is pretty simple. I just want you to open this link that I put in the chat. And don't click on anything yet because we will be doing more of that later as we go on into the class. So once you're done opening that link, just put a thumbs up on your screen. All right, so if you saw the link that you clicked on, it took you to a site called Pigeonetics, and that is exactly what we will be learning about today. We will be learning about genetics, more specifically pigeon genetics. This is one of like the funner aspects of biology. I don't know if that is a word, but I certainly think it's more interesting, and I hope you guys enjoy this as well. So let me share my screen. All right. Okay, so before we get started, some background vocabulary. So genetics is basically everything dealing with genes, hence the name genetics. And so if you remember from our first class, genetics, it has a lot to do with DNA. And so I talked about this a little bit in our first biology class. And so can anybody remember like the analogy I used for DNA? I think it was like DNA is the blank of an organism. So can anybody tell me what that is? And you can just raise your hand or just say it out loud. Okay, well, if you guys don't remember, the analogy was that DNA was the building blocks or like instruction manual of an organism. And so chromosomes are like basically stacks of DNA. They are a lot of DNA piled together. And what chromosomes are that they are stacks of DNA, as I said, but they also carry genes which code for certain traits. And so genes are sections of DNA that codes for a trait. So if you think about it on a size scale, first you have your chromosome as the largest, and then you have your genes as the smallest. And then from the smallest of them all is DNA, because DNA is what makes up everything in this. And so what do chromosomes and genes do? Well, they determine traits, which are any characteristic in an offspring or child of something. They can be visible, behavioral, or chemical. And down below, I put some characteristic or traits of pigeons that you can find. For example, you have the crest trait. These are all physical, which means that you can see them. So you have your crest trait, which is a head feathering pattern. And you also have your bar trait, which is a wing pattern. And more information about that later. So just to make sure you guys understand this, can anybody think of like a characteristic in humans that you can see, or it's in our behavior, or just basically what is a human trait? And so just type it in the chat or say it out loud, just what you think is a trait.
Maybe your eye color?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Eye color is a trait that is found in humans because, as you can see, we can see it. So that eye color is a visible trait in humans. All right, so in genes, there are actually a lot of genes. That's why you have so many traits. And so what we call these are alleles, which are versions of a gene. And so a little bit of information. So when two birds like have babies, there's a mom and a dad. And so the baby will always have two genes, one from the mom and one from the dad. So there will always be two genes. And so if these two genes or versions or alleles are the same, we will call them homozygous. Homo means same, so they are literally two of the same allele or version of a gene. And for example, down below, you can see that the crest gene comes in two versions, the no crest and the crest allele. And these are represented by the capital C and a lowercase c. And so if you have two uppercase C's, it's pretty easy to see that because both parents have no crest, then the children will also have no crest. And on the flip side, if both parents have a crest, then the babies will also have no crest. However, when we have two different alleles, for example, if the one parent has a crest and the other has no crest, then we will call it heterozygous. Hetero meaning two different alleles or versions of the gene. And so this is starting to get a little more complicated. So if you have a parent that has no crest and a parent that has a crest, what do you think is the probability, or what do you think the offspring will look like? Like, will it have a crest? Will it have no crest? So what do you think is the outcome? And again, you can type this in the chat or just say it. All right, well, it seems like nobody's stepping up. So in the next slide, we will find out what happens if one parent has a crest and the other parent has no crest. So we will find out what the baby bird will look like. All right, so within these versions of a genes, you have dominant and recessive genes. This is getting very complicated, but bear with me. So what dominant genes are is that they are the version or an allele that causes one version of a trait. And what dominant alleles do, they're kind of mean. They hide the other gene, or they dominate over it. And so, for example, going back to our pigeon example, if one parent has no crest and the other parent has a crest allele, because the no crest is dominant, it will basically like hide the crest allele, so the baby bird will not have a crest. And you can see that in the diagram below, where if you have two parents with no crest, the baby will have no crest. If one parent has a crest and the other has no crest, then the no crest will dominate over the crest and the baby will have no crest as well. And so on the flip side, you have recessive genes, which are versions or alleles of a gene that causes another version of the same trait. And going back to our crest again. And usually with recessive genes, it usually happens that only if both the parents carry the recessive gene, the baby will also have that recessive gene. So if two parents have the crest allele, which is recessive, then the baby will obviously have the crest allele as well. And so how we represent this with letters is that, and this will come up in a later slide and it's pretty important, is that we use an uppercase letter to represent the big, or because it is big and it represents the dominant gene. And we use a lowercase letter to represent the recessive gene because it is kind of small and like hides away. And so this is actually very important coming up. So like make sure to remember that an uppercase C or any other letter, just an uppercase letter equals dominant and a lowercase letter equals recessive. All right, so why do we use these letters? And so we use these letters to type out the genotype, which are traits represented by letters or other symbols. And so if we have in our genotype example below, if the parent has two, so who can tell me what so both of these, for the first example, both parents have no crest. And so can anybody tell me like what letters will can these pictures replace? So like, will the genotype be 2 uppercase C's, 2 lowercase C's, or one of each? So what is the genotype? And again, this will be, yeah, go ahead.
For the first one, it would be CC, both capital. And then for the second one, it would be capital and then lowercase. And then for the third one, it would be lowercase and then lowercase.
Yeah, that was actually perfect. Really good job. I'm really happy that you remembered that capital C represents the big one. But anyways, yeah, that is the genotype. And so, yeah, so just to summarize, a genotype are the traits represented by letters, or in this case, symbols such as these pictures. And so the genotype, on the other side, we have your phenotype. And the phenotype are traits that are represented physically or in a diagram of the actual offspring. So like in a picture where you can actually see what the baby will actually look like. So for example, of going back to our crest allele again, if we have two no crest alleles, then we can determine that the phenotype will look like a bird with no crest, and so on and so forth for all of our other examples. And yeah. All right, so now we're going to go to our simulator. I think most of you already have this open, but I'm going to kind of play along with it. And so this simulator is actually really useful because it belongs to like this website called Learn Genetics. And this website is actually pretty useful as well. It has a lot of information on genetics and that kind of stuff in general. And if you didn't notice already, most of the content in the slide is from this site. So if you want to like explore a little bit on your own time after class, go ahead. But for now, we will be actually breeding some pigeons. And yeah, just let me get the website loaded. Oh yeah, and one more thing before we start, you do not have to, if you want to, you can follow along with me, but I will be kind of playing the puzzles with you, so yeah. So this is just like an introduction. You don't want to like, it basically kind of covers what I've done.
You've probably seen this guy before, maybe up on a wire or flying around town with about 100 of his friends. It's a pigeon, or more properly, a domestic rock pigeon. Domestic rock pigeons come in different colors, patterns, shapes, and sizes. In all, there are over 350 breeds. People like to breed pigeons with specific combinations of characteristics. Pigeon fanciers show their birds at fairs. They fly their birds in races where the winners earn million-dollar prizes. Some even write books.
Oh yeah, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but to breed a pigeon is basically to combine one parent bird with another parent, and then they have eggs together, and the outcome of the offspring is that
The first thing you need to know about pigeon breeding is that, just like people, pigeons can be male or female. Sex is determined by sex chromosomes. In people, they're X and Y. In pigeons, they're Z and W. Your first puzzle is to breed a female pigeon.
Alright, so this is our first puzzle. I will kind of do this by myself just so you can get an idea of what this simulator is kind of like. And so first we have our dad pigeon, which is represented by the chromosomes DZ, and also our mom pigeon, which is represented by DW. And so, yeah, this is the male pigeon, and this is the female pigeon. So before we actually get started, we will need to know what our goal is. And so that would be to make a female pigeon. And so just based on what I just said, what do you think the chromosomes or genotype of the female pigeon is? Just the hint is very similar. It's basically the same as one of the pigeons. And yeah, as always, just say it out loud or type in the chat or just Okay, well, if you guys are really stuck, I'll just go ahead and start. So first we have our dad pigeon, you can see his chromosomes, and your mom pigeon. So for a female pigeon, you will need a Z and a W chromosome. So you have one from your dad and the other from your mom. Because the dad or the male does not have a Y chromosome, so the W has to come from the mom because only the mom. And so if we catch our pigeon, we will get a female. And so that is basically kind of how this simulator works. We will do pigeons based on the goal. I'll just keep on playing these puzzles, and it will be really helpful if you guys could walk me through this. I've already done this before, but yeah, it's just really good for you guys to know how to. Alright, so for this one, we are going to breed a male pigeon. And so this is kind of the same as the female one we did before. Another hint, the pigeons, like the goal, will be basically the same as one of the parents. So which parent or what will the chromosome letters be? Like, will it be a ZZ or a ZW or like? Okay, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and show you guys how to breed a male pigeon. So our male pigeon will basically be the same as our dad pigeon, so we will have two. So we will not be using the W from the mom because we are trying to make a male pigeon, so we will only be using 2 Z chromosomes. And if we catch that, we will get our male.
To be a good pigeon breeder, you need to know how to pair birds to get offspring with just the right combination of characteristics. You need to know a lot about genetics.
And so this is kind of like where I talked about dominance and alleles and all that kind of stuff. Yes.
Inherited characteristics, like whether a pigeon has a crest or not, are the products of genes. Genes pass from parents through eggs and sperm to offspring.
Yeah, so basically, kind of to like reiterate what this page is saying, all traits come from of an organism come from its parents. For example, if you have brown eyes, then probably one of your parents also has brown eyes because your parents passed that brown eye trait down to you.
For most genes, offspring inherit 2 copies, one from each parent. The 2 copies can be the same, or they can be different.
Yeah, so if the 2 copies are the same, can anybody remember what they are called? So if the 2 genes are the same or like the same letters, what is it called? A hint, it starts with H. Yeah, so if the 2 copies of the gene are the same, then they are called homozygous genes, homo meaning same, so yeah, it means same gene. And if they have different genes, it is called heterozygous, and hetero means different, so that's correct.
Different versions of the same gene are called alleles. The allele combination for a particular gene is called a genotype. The 2 alleles work together to make what we see, what scientists call a phenotype.
Yeah, so the phenotype is like what we can actually see of the gene. Oh yeah, and also if the music is kind of bothering you or you can't hear it, you can mute the site. I think for most computers, if you right click on this and then you can mute the site. So I don't know if it will work for you, but there should be an option. And before we proceed, I should also probably mention that sex and characteristics have no correlation whatsoever. So like if a bird is male, that does not mean that he will always have a crest. Or like similarly, if a bird is female, that does not always mean that she will have no crest. So they are completely different, but yeah. Alright, so if we were to make a bird with no crest, we will obviously need one mom and one dad. And so, yeah. I'm gonna select these 2 because the mom has no crest, so that is a greater probability. And so, yeah, if we are to have a male, we will obviously need 2 chromosomes for sex. And when we get to the crest, this is kind of where the dominant part comes in. So, can anybody remember what the dominant gene is for the crest? So is it the no crest that is dominant or the crest that is? And if okay, so just to like reiterate, maybe that was a little too confusing. So if you think about it in terms of letters, what is the crest? Has a crest lettering. Like what letter is represented? Okay, well, the crest, so if a pigeon does have a crest, it is represented by 2 lowercase c, because like I said before, the lowercase letters are always recessive. this is very important. Again, I'm going to repeat this a lot, that lowercase is recessive and uppercase is dominant because like when you're trying to make a pigeon, you obviously have to follow the rules, otherwise your bird might look very messy. So just based on that, if we have one crest and another that has no crest, it will be represented by a capital C and a lowercase c. So based on the dominance that I talked about, what do you think the bird would look like if it had this combination? Like, will it have no crest or will it have? Oh yeah, and also if you guys could like actually talk to me, that would just keep everything moving very quickly. It's okay if you get it wrong, that's to learn. But yeah. Even if you just hit it. Okay, yeah, but anyways, I will go ahead and hatch this pigeon. If we have one crest and one no crest, the no crest will dominate over the crest because like kind of think of it like the dominant gene is kind of weak. It does not like it when the recessive shows up. So that's why it always hides the recessive. And so yeah, if we hatch this, we will supposedly get a male pigeon with. And so going on to our fourth question, our goal is to have a male with a crest. So before we actually even get started, just based on what we've already talked through, can anybody tell me what the sex chromosome for the letters will be? And you will have two options of two Z's or one Z and one W. So what will the letters be? Okay, so if we are to have a male pigeon, we will need two Z chromosomes because two Z's make a male pigeon and the ZW makes a female pigeon, so just remember that. And so if you might have remembered from before, the no crest is really mean. It does not like it when there is a crest allele. So in order for the crest to actually show up, what do you think needs to happen? Because remember, if there even is just one no crest gene, then the pigeon will have no crest. So like, do you think the pigeon will need to have one crest and one no crest, or two crests, or two no crests? So which one of the options do you think will happen? Oh yeah, and I'm just gonna say this one more time, but yeah, just like try to like answer my questions, because this will ultimately help you if you are doing this actually on your own. It's okay to get things wrong, but I just want to make sure that you guys can like understand this. If you don't, I'll try to explain it a little better, but yeah, I just need to like know where you guys. But anyways, I'm gonna keep going. So in order for our pigeons to have a crest, we will not be using any of these with the no crest allele because but anyways, you will have two crest alleles because that's the only way you can have a pigeon with the recessive. Because yeah, even if there is one dominant only recessive showing that is why you will need two recessive. Alright, so if we are to breed our female pigeon with our crest, this is slightly trickier because you will need two generations of pigeons. Just to say you need two sets of parents. So obviously, just by looking at this, obviously we only have two female options. We will need those and they are the same, so we can't really choose them. But for our male option, it's kind of easy to see like which one we can rule out immediately because it does not have crest allele. So which one of these three pigeons do you think should not be used when we make our pigeon? Oh yeah, and if you're a little ahead or like working ahead on your own, it would still be great if you could answer my questions. But yeah, kind of just. Okay, but anyways, we will not be using pigeon number 2 because it does not have the crest allele like the other two pigeons. The other two are basically the same. We will be using a female combination of these. And for our first pigeon, I've already said this earlier, but the crest will always dominate over the crest. So yes, the crest will dominate over the crest. So we're just going to do first and we will breed our offspring. And yeah, I'm gonna mute this site because the music is kind of annoying. All right, so now we have more pigeons, and some of these you might see do have the crest allele. And so like before, which pigeons do you think are not suitable to make a baby pigeon with a crest? So like yeah, it's kind of like impossible to ask for a no crest pigeon to produce a crest pigeon. So which one of these birds do you think we can like just take out? And it'll be like 1, 2, 3, and 4, like going from left to right. Yes, so number 2 and number 4, they do not, even though it is a suitable combination of a dad pigeon and a mom pigeon, because they do not have the crest allele, they are not suitable for breeding. Therefore, we have number 1 and 3. And again, for our female pigeon, we will need the combination ZW. And now we can combine our 2 crest alleles because both parents have it and we can kind of select it. So if we hatch that, we will get a female pigeon with a crest. Okay, and this is kind of like going into a little more depth. We still have a little bit of time, so I guess we'll just keep on going with these puzzles, and I'll kind of try to explain it as I go. And yeah, so the slipper and no slipper, it kind of works the same way as the crest and no crest, so they're both variations of the same gene. So yeah. All right, so it's actually been kind of a while since I've done this. So our goal is a male with no foot feathers. So obviously we'll need our female, and our males are the same, so we're just gonna select those. For a male pigeon, we'll need the combination CZ, so just have that down. And we can't really select anything so far, so we're just gonna have these two, the slipper and no slipper, and we'll just hatch it to see what happens. Okay, yeah, and yeah, now I remember the no slipper is recessive, I believe, and the slipper is recessive, which means that it's not likely to show up, and and the uh the no slipper is dominant. So if we have one slipper and one no slipper, then the no slipper will likely dominate. So yeah, we're just gonna have these two. Well, actually, it looks like I got them confused. No slipper is recessive. So that means that the only way you can get a bird with no foot feathering is if both the parents have no foot feathering. And so again, this is kind of like adding up what we've already learned. Like I said before, kind of like how sex and crest, they have no relationship whatsoever. Slipper and crest also don't have any relationship. So that's kind of like if a pigeon does have a crest, it's not 100% chance that the pigeon will also have foot feathering or slippers. Okay, so this one might take a little. This one might be the last one we do for today because it will take a little longer. So yeah, let's just go straight into it. All right, so our first step would be to get our pigeon with a crest. And so yeah, so we can select this pigeon because it has both the crest alleles. And we can also select this male pigeon because it also has, for these two, this one will probably work better because they both have the crest. And so for our female, we will obviously need our combination of CW, our two crests. Oh wait, actually I kind of messed up. Yeah, sorry, I kind of messed up. It's been kind of a while since I've done this, but yeah, I kind of forgot that the slipper is dominant. So for that, we will need a pigeon with actually a slipper gene because we will obviously need that, but our male will stay the same. And yeah, so that's kind of like filling in everything. And if we hatch that, we will get these offsprings. Okay. Yeah, actually I'm kind of like stuck on this as well, so that's kind of on my fault that I didn't like prepare ahead, but yeah, I'll just kind of like try to solve this through with you guys. Oh, I see. Actually, it looks like for our first generation, we might have to not follow this female rule. We might have to breed a male bird. So I will try to do that. Okay, now it will work because if you see from this pigeon, from these two pigeons, they both have the slipper that we need. So if we bring these two pigeons down and we put our correct, everything that is correct, but now we can put in our two slippers because both the parents have it. So if we hatch that, we will have our pigeon. And so that was kind of like a little trickier one, but yeah, that's basically everything. All right, so that is basically everything. I'll stop from there. If you guys want to keep on exploring that website, feel free to do so. It is actually a really good website if you want to learn more about genetics in general. You can keep on playing the puzzle if you want, but it will not save your progress if you exit out of the tab. So that's just something to keep in mind. And so today we still have like 1 minute left, so I'll put an exit ticket in the chat. And so once you've answered that in the chat, or if you've just said it out loud, you are free to go. So yeah. And yeah, it's in the chat the first time I sent it to the wrong person, but yeah, once you've answered this question either in the chat or by any other means, you are free to go. And it can be like anything about genetics. It could just be like something you enjoyed, or like what did you think of the pigeon simulator? And yeah, just basically anything from today's class. Yeah, okay. I'm just gonna hang around in the meeting until everybody's answered it, but yeah, if you've already answered the exit ticket, you are free to go. Angela, that is a great answer. Yeah, everybody who's answered it, I think, yeah, can leave. So yeah, good job everyone, and yeah, see you next week.